Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show, it's about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Witcher, Season 2, Episode 4. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's start off with Cahir and Yennefer as they're laying low, and once again we're just seeing just how people in general treat the elves. There's that one guy who has to pee and he's like, could you at least take me to the back alley? You could keep me restrained. And it's like, cool. He's like, alright, go ahead, relieve yourself. And he does, and he's like, oh, you elf scum, blah 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 blah. It's like, man, could you hear about it but also seeing it firsthand, because once we started with the series, the cleansing had already happened, so. And there wasn't too much interaction between the elves and people to an extent, other than like Jaxier and Geralt's run into Philavandro like last season. That's about it, right? So getting to see like how they are treated as less than, treated as like they're some kind of just less than, you know? And that's heartbreaking to look at that, and you're like, God, could you just, why does that hate exist like that? And I think that is an element that definitely is prominent in like Yennefer and Cahir's side of things, as they're trying to lay low, especially when wanted posters are put out for both of them, so they got to get out of town. Initially, Yennefer didn't want to go to Sintra because it's like, right, like, is that really going to be like the best place for me and stuff like that, you know, especially because like, right, Fringilla is running things now, and it's like, oh, you didn't know about that? Yeah, Fringilla's working with the elves and stuff, so it's like, yeah, once you stop being useful, it is interesting how people just toss you to the side. But Cahir did make this saying that like Fringilla, like if everything she does is because she is a believer and stuff like that. But it's like, no, like, you know what our power as mages are, like mages of the court, was that our whole point was to basically make people do what we want them to be powerful enough to shape people's minds and make them go in a direction we go to. But he's like, no, that's not what it is. It's like, me and Fringilla, we are believers in the mirror and like the white flame and everything. So it's like they're devout believers and followers of this. So it's like he believes probably like, right, once I get back, like everything's gonna be okay because I trust Fringilla to kind of keep things going because she's a believer. But that's also the thing too, she's a believer, but her beliefs have gotten shaken because now it is purely about looking out for herself. So I think that potentially changes things, because now she's putting herself in a position to be more powerful. So when Cahir returns, I'm wondering, is she going to be really quick to like adhere and kind of give up a little bit of that power? We'll have to wait and see. But obviously they're on the run, and then they end up finding themselves in the sewer, where they end up running into two elves, and obviously one of the elves recognizes both Cahir and Yennefer. It's like, oh, they're on our side, because, you know, he's a knight from Nilfgaard, and she's a part elf mage. It's like, yeah, they're on our side, which he was like, no, like, there's no one on our side, like, everyone's kind of out for themselves. But Yennefer was able to kind of convince the one who couldn't communicate. Like, I think he's mute at the very least, so he couldn't communicate, and Yennefer ends up saying, like, right, like, at the end of the day, all men are pretty, you know what all men want, they're simple-minded. It's like he was, like, blown away by, like, how beautiful Yennefer was, so it's like, yeah, I knew just exactly what way to kind of get what I want. So it's like, right, they know a way to get to Sintra, but it's like, right, it's by a boat, and it's like, right, they're the only two that are supposed to be up there, but it's like, Yennefer's promising, like, right, if there's not enough room, for more than us, if it's only the two, we'll let you go, we promise. I'm like, I wouldn't believe that from these two, because like, they're most likely the people to stab you in the back and just to get the seat on the boat. Granted, doesn't have to come to that, interestingly enough, because there is something down there with them. We never even got a good look at it. Because Home Dude was like, right, he wants to go to, because Cahir was promising, like, right, you help us, you get land of your own once I'm, like, back in Sintra, I'm back with Nilfgaard and everything. And that guy was, the one who couldn't, like, who seemed to mute, was, like, talking about, like, right, having land of his own and a Ravenhead, beauty by his side. Sadly, he got taken by the monster. His buddy bailed on him. You know, because that guy was a lot more hope. Like the one who ends up dying is a lot more hopeful, and the other guy just got scared in that moment. Yennefer and Cahir tried to help him, but and even Yennefer ended up getting caught at one point. But luckily, she was able to fend for herself, and Cahir was able to. They were both able to get away, and it's like, right, it gets revealed, like, right, her magic is gone, and for her, it's just the most frustrating thing. It's like, life doesn't go the way you want it to. She basically references the whole situation between her and Geralt about, like, right, that anything, that you feeling the way you feel about someone, isn't, real. You find out, like, oh, it's just because of a wish that someone made before they even got to know you, and Cahir's like, right, that power. He's like, what you did at Sodom was, you know, beautiful. And it's like, right, the chaos was taken from her. But it's like, right, the fact is that if you're still here, that means you have an even greater purpose, an even greater role to play. There's still more for you to do, even though she doesn't believe it. So they end up running into that guy who left his friend to die, and it's like, yeah, you could tell. He's like, no, I had to live. That's why I was like, why are you acting like you're someone super important? You're like, no, you're just some guy. But it's like, yeah, sadly, and you know, that's not just an elf thing. I'm sure it plays into it. Like, as an elf, it's like, right, when you've been kind of beaten down, like he even said, like, because the other guy was talking about, like, yeah, with the newborn coming, like, it'll be a new age for the elves. We'll be able to start anew. But he's like, none of the elves have the strength to fight for something to be start anew. Like, no one has that fight left in them. And so I think that's also the thing, too. Like, the elves have been beaten down to the point there's no more fight in some of them, and especially like him. But also, like, that it just applies to the humans as well. Like, you know, sometimes that self-preservation takes hold, and you're just like, I'm looking out for me and no one else. And I think that guy fit that narrative, but the person they're waiting on is the Sandpiper, and they're like, yeah, he's got a performance. And then the moment the music starts playing, I was like, is that our boy? And it's like, yes, it is, Jaxier. I was like, I love that he ends up running into Yennefer first. Because I know, based on the trailer, spoiler, well, it's not a spoiler, because by the time this comes out, because depending on if you're all watching these one at a time too. The fact is that I know that he meets Geralt at one point in time, just because I'll go ahead and talk about it because it was in the trailer. So that's why I was kind of like, oh, surprised that this is the person you would meet first would be Yennefer. I love it. But the moment, like, Yennefer started hearing about the music and hearing it and everything, she was like, she knew exactly who it was. And I love the new song, Burn Witcher Burn. I'm not saying that's the title of it, but maybe it is. But I love it. Or maybe it's just called Burn, but it's like, oh man. I was like, oh man, he's talking mad shit about Geralt. I love it. And but even that quiet, like, shakiness at the end, burn, 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 and just like trails off like that. I was like, oh, that's so heartbreaking. You could tell he poured his heart into this song and everything, so. But later on, Yennefer comes to see him. He's like, oh, what is it? Like, oh, of course, why would it be you? And she runs up and he hugs him. And he's like, hugging? You're hugging me? You're a hugger now? What's going on? And it's like, right. Finding out that she's on her way to Sintra. Because he was like, right, I completely forgot about the fact is that you're an elf too, despite, like, our differences and everything. Well, for one, they have the commonality of they're both, like, saying, like, oh, we're better off without Geralt. It's like, because she's like, oh, that song I heard, like, oh, the Geralt must have really done something. She's like, he's like, no, that song could have been about anyone. Okay, yes, it's about Geralt. It was really basic, but it's like, yeah, we're better off without him. They both are, you know? But I think, you know, despite what they say, they both miss him to some extent. It's just they both walked away heartbroken for different reasons. Said circumstances kind of brought them all together, ended up also being the thing that kind of tore them apart, that whole Jin thing. You know, it's like, right, Geralt and Jaxier became closer because it's like, right, he went above and beyond to save Jaxier because he cared about Jaxier, but he also made a wish because he cared about Yennefer, and that whole thing just kind of imploded all those relationships all at once. One event imploded all those relationships in that moment. But Jaxier was apologetic because he's like, right, I didn't even think about it. You're part elf. I'm sorry what they've done to your people. You know, he's like, he's seen it firsthand, like how they get treated. And even she's like, why'd you take up this mantle? And it was like, for him, he was like, oh, I was in a city of, like, free thinkers. It didn't matter what your situation was, your background, what race you were. We could all come together. But people came for the elves. Then, like the dwarves, he's like, it's only a matter of time before they come after everyone, like they consider other. And he's like, I'm an artist. Like, how long will it be before they, because that's the sad truth of like persecution. It's easy to be like, oh man, look, I'm glad it's them and not me. Yeah, let's get those elves. And then it becomes a problem later on when it's like, right. Then it eventually becomes like, oh, you're different, you're an other. So, you know, for him, he decided he wanted to try and do something, help in whatever way he can. Because it turns out there are people here, rich and powerful people who actually back him. He has like, God, what's the term I'm looking for? I mean, backer is it, but there's still another word for it. Essentially, silent partners, I guess, and more so like who fund the whole operation essentially to help him do what he's doing. So it's about helping as many elves, but also Kahir too. I guess even in that moment, it's like he's not going to judge Kahir too much. It's like, right, you're on a wanted poster, but still not even knowing like, well, because he doesn't know the whole Sintra story of like, oh, cool. You're helping a guy that basically helped burn Sintra to the ground, but also it's like, right, the law of surprise, like about the whole Garrett. Well, because neither one, she doesn't know about the law of surprise situation. He does, but Jax here doesn't know that Geralt wit and claimed his law of surprise. So that makes things interesting. So it was also interesting too, because like the Sintra thing hadn't happened yet. It was whispers about it. About like Nilfgaard making its way to Sintra. That was kind of whispered about in the episode when everything kind of, all three of them kind of went their separate ways type of thing. So just kind of interesting. But Jaxier's like, right, there's something I do have to tell you. You guys smell awful. Like something crawled up your ass and died type of awful. So, but I love it when they're heading for the boat and he's going to try and like give them some time. He's like, yeah, I'm going to do what I'm best at. And the guys, and Kahir's like, what is that? He's like, I don't know. That's what makes me pretty good at it. And the guy's like, oh, I love this. Like, oh, where's your paperwork? And Jaxier starts singing a song and the guy's like, hey, it's you, the bard. He's like, yep, that's me, Jaxier the bard. It's like, yeah. He's like, my daughter loves you. You're here. Yeah. And I love that just as Jaxier was about to get on the boat, the guy had to criticize him. He's like, though that song is your best work. He was like, oh, what? It's like, yeah, it's a bit complicated. I love it. It's basically his song that's telling like the adventures of Geralt and everything. Because he's like, yeah, he's like, it took a while. It wasn't until like the fourth verse or whatever that I realized that it's different timelines. Plus the dragon reveal, I saw that coming. I'm like, oh, you cheeky bastard, you writing that into the story like that. I love it, getting all cheeky. And I love that Jaxier just couldn't let it go. And he started running his mouth. It's like, oh, come on. Like, what are we going to do? And the guy who was kind of a quote-unquote coward before decided to stand up to give everyone else a chance because he's like, right, I stood on the sidelines before. Like, I can at least make sure other people make it. Because it isn't just about Kahir and Yennefer. There's other people that are trying to get on the boat as well. So he ran his mouth saying, like, oh, fuck the North. And they beat the crap out of him. Luckily, Jaxier was able to get on the boat with the others. And even he's wondering, you know, with Yennefer, is like, what's different? And she's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, no, like, just beyond, like, what's different? And she's like, right. Basically talked about losing her magic. And he's like, oh, like, he's like, wait, you lost your, because she was like, chaos is done with me. And he's like, oh, you lost your magic? And it's like, how, is that even possible? And she's like, yeah. And obviously, like, he understands it to some extent because he's like, right, he's always worried, like, what if the next muse doesn't come to him? Like, basically, what if he can't write music anymore? You know, it's like, what are we supposed to do when the one thing we're supposed to be good at, that we were put on this continent to do, we're no longer able to do? But even the fact is, Yennefer is who she is, and so the Jaxier is like, there's no way chaos is done with you yet, you being Yennefer. But it's like, right, goodbye, good luck, and good riddance, and they're going their separate ways. And she's like, same to you. And it's like, it's a very heartfelt goodbye that you never would have expected between these two, especially like how much disdain he had for her like the last time they met. But yeah, they go their separate ways. But Jaxier gets attacked or something, and we see, like, his instruments left behind, and Yennefer's worried about him, but, you know, Kahir's like, right, we have to go, we can't stay here. So the question is, what is she going to do? Is she going to step up and try and help Jaxier? Probably not. She's probably just going to go straight to Sintra, because, once again, just based on the trailer, like, where Jaxier ends up, the question is, why did he end up there? Because there was also an interesting person on the boat Dara, because a little insight to his situation is that oh god, what's the actor's name? It's Graham McTavish, I believe. I know him from, he was in Colony for a little bit, but the things I best know him for is Netflix wise, he was in season 4 of Lucifer. I don't remember his character's name. He was the priest that Chloe went to. I'll leave it at that. If you're familiar with Lucifer, you know what I'm talking about. But also, like, other thing I best know him for is the the cowboy, or rather the saint of killers in Preacher. So I was like, hey, and that he's protecting that king, because it's like, oh yeah, like they're trying to poison you. So I thought it was interesting because it's like, right, just because the North is joining together in this battle against Nilfgaard and the elves, like, doesn't make this a really good alliance. It's like, yeah, what happens the moment they capture and killed all the elves? Like, it's just going to be like, right, it's all about Sintra. Sintra is like the most important point for whatever reason, right? So it's like, right, we would have never been able to steal Sintra from Calanthe, but now that it's kind of up in the air, and the guy's like, we can take it for ourselves. It's like, if we're smart about it. And then there's the owl. So it seemed like, at least I interpret it this way, but they don't, not quite necessarily showcases, but it seems like that owl's kind of a two-way mirror type of thing of like, yes, someone's listening in, because he kind of gives the owl the nod, and then later on he's talking like a madman in front of the owl, but I'm like, are you secretly getting some communication through the owl? Because I thought it was, but there hasn't been revealed anything, no one's talking through it, but not unless it's something that maybe he has to connect with the owl that he's hearing it, or maybe it's just supposed to be like Dijkstra guy is just mad. I have no idea. But basically, he's coming up with a plan to basically sneak someone into Sintra. It has to be someone, and ends up being Dara, which Dara has his own... Like, he'll be someone that will willingly do it, because I guess, like, losing all that he lost... And probably feeling, because his biggest issue too was like, he didn't do anything for his family when the time came. Obviously, him and Ciri didn't live on the best of circumstances either. But he's going to be their insider, because I'm sure they're going to be like, right, we'll let you go when it's all said and done if you do this for us. Like, not unless they're controlling him to do it, but I think he's just kind of like, they're just like pointing him in the right direction, be our spy, or there'll be a problem type. I don't know. We'll see how that turns out. But it's like, hey, bringing Dara back into the story. So I'm wondering, I mean, especially if it is Sintra, I was about to say, like, I'm wondering, well, but it's like, no, Ciri's not there, which we'll get to that soon. But I'm like, no, she's not going to Sintra. The only person is Geralt. So, but obviously Geralt is intensifying him and Ciri's training, and lo and behold, who does Ciri run into the woods? In the woods, it's Triss, and I'm like. At first I was like, wait, what are you doing? At first I was like, is that a monster pretending to be her? But it turns out to actually be Triss. I didn't talk about it last episode. The way they were implying, like, oh, she looks different. I'm like, is it a different actress that's playing her? It seems like it is. I don't know, because she doesn't look exactly the same, because I was like, I don't know if that is the same actress or not. Maybe that's, because that's what some of the dialogue made it sound like, and I'm like, looking at her, I'm like, having just seen season 1, she looks a little different, so it might be a different actor, or maybe I'm just being crazy. Either way. I thought it was interesting. I was like, oh, the timing. I was like, oh, you being here at this time? She's like, oh yeah, I'm on my way to like Kaer Morhen, and it's like, that's weird. Oh, it turns out Geralt called her. It's like, oh, hey Triss, and it's like, oh, it's like you two know each other, and it's like, yeah. And I love that whole bit when like later on, Ciri's like, so how do you two know each other? And then later on, Triss is asking, so Geralt, how do you and Ciri know each other? And just each time he signed, because he's like, all right, long story short. But it turns out this isn't Triss's first time. Apparently, after the whole thing with the Striga last season, he let Vesemir and the others know. So Triss has been there before. She's been a welcomed guest. So obviously, the moment she shows up, she's fitting in amongst the crowd, immediately talking mad shit to like Lambert about like him not bathing and stuff like that. She's like, are you actually going to take a bath? And she's like, yeah, I figured as much not. But Geralt asked her to come here because he wants her to train Ciri, which I'm like, okay, so that explains why Triss isn't around like last episode, like why she just kind of left out. I thought she was going to Sintra with the whole Nilfgaard thing maybe, but it's like, nope, she's here because she was here because she left because Geralt called her. Now, they made a point to kind of dance around it because Geralt still believes Yennefer to be dead, but at no point did Triss let him know that she wasn't. I don't know whether it's a thing of, it's just like she probably doesn't, well, she knows that Geralt and Yennefer had their run-in, but she probably doesn't think much of it, didn't know like there was anything going on between them. Because she's like, right, she's saying off the names of all the people that died, and he was like, stop. And she's like, right, but I want to tell, she essentially wants to keep them alive in her memories, and wants to tell every single person that she comes across who they are, because the more people who know them, the more they stay alive. But she stopped partway through the list because he stopped her. But for her, she's just like, right, hearing those names hurt, but it runs a little deeper because he knows one of the names on that list is Yennefer, or at least it would be, but he never gave her a chance. If he had let her run through the list, he's like, wait, her name's not on the list. Probably because he never asked about Yennefer, because like, why would he? He's got to protect Ciri, so like that kind of has to come first and foremost right now. Like, it's just lamenting over like Yennefer's death. He's like burying it deep inside because protecting Ciri comes first and foremost. So, but there was even this moment where she was kind of like, oh, like, come spend the night, like, time with me. Neither one of us should be alone right now. And he was just like, I'm sorry. And he apologizes for it later, but she was like, no, like, you are what I needed at that time. It's like, right, like, pain. She was like, the fact is, like, I found your pain so exciting, because she's like, yes, her scars healed up, yes, but then Geralt points out that there are some wounds that are just so deep they can't heal, because it's not just the wound itself, the physical wound, it's the psychological and mental, like, toll it took on her. It's on top of that too. So a reminder of just like how much pain you were in, and just what it, because those scars also are reminiscent of what happened at Solden. Like, all the people, so much death, like so many of other like mages died, and just non-mages died in that Solden. So it's like there was just so much death there, and so that pain as well. And obviously Geralt talks about, like, right, I know that more than you know. Once again, the Yennefer thing, but he didn't open himself up to finding out that she's actually alive. He'll find out probably because destiny is what it is. And as I said in my nerd mode, it's like it has the most unexpected way of bringing people back together. Just like Jaxier and Yennefer ran into each other this episode, in the most unexpected way. So, but it was interesting because what was it? Ciri has like newer clothes, and was it Cohen and Lambert kind of bust her chops a little bit about it, which immediately Ciri Ciri, yes, does kind of walk away, because she feels like because they're like, oh, princess, ha 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 ha, like, they're just messing with her a little bit. But then Triss gets pissed at him because it's like, right, you're like, why shouldn't she be able to dress like that? Like, you guys are such a bunch of, like, it's basically a frat house at Kaer Morhen. So it's like, right, the fact is that, do you guys even give her soap or anything like that? What about it's when it's time for her to bleed and stuff, like, it's like, so it's like, right, are you just inconsiderate arseholes, so. And Geralt shows up later on. He's like, right, the others felt so bad that you didn't get to eat, and hands Ciri some food. Because it turns out the creature that he killed last episode, that Geralt killed last episode, the one that killed the Leshy, turns out it's something he's never come across before either. So he's wondering whether or not a mage or something created it or anything. But the moment, like, she examines it, like, does some alchemist tests to see if it is, but it turns out, no, it wasn't mage or alchemy, like, related, or mutation, like, related, but there is this, like, specific material in it, and it turns out Geralt recognizes it because it's also in a piece from the Leshy, and it's like, how would you get that? And it's like, it's a piece from the monoliths, and you're like, and then Ciri ties this back into the monolith, which I'm like, I would have never thought that would be a big thing, but apparently it is. The thing she brought down in the beginning of season 1 when she was getting away from Cahir is that monolith. And so initially she's still kind of dancing around it because she's like, yeah, it toppled over. And he was like, how was that? and she touches the material, and it gives her kind of a vision. I'm assuming maybe like when she toppled it, like it awakened something, like either it was buried underground or like, because the actual monolith broke apart, so there was probably something sealed away in it all those years ago, maybe so long ago that no one remembers, and whatever it was got awakened, and it's been sending out these monsters, because Geralt did bring it to Trish's attention, like, right, the Leshy, like, she was drawn to the Leshy, and then this creature popped up and killed the Leshy, and then immediately came after her. The fact is, it seems like it might be a competition amongst the monsters of, no, I'm gonna get her, no, I'm gonna get her, like, they're driven by some control or instinct to get after her that they're willing to slice and kill through each other just to make it happen, you know? So, but that's also why Geralt wants her trained by Triss, because it's like, I want her prepared, because I definitely won't be around forever to protect her, so I need her to be able to look after herself in case anything ever does happen to me at some point in time. So, but she eventually opens up, you know, about what happened. It's like, right, the Black Knight came after me, I screamed, and the monolith fell. And now, you know, Ciri's worried, because she's like, what if I am the cause for all this? Like, what if I'm behind the monster? He's like, whatever it is, I'll look into it myself and I'll fix it. So he's on his way to Sintra, which is like, right, he promised he would never go back there, and he's already going back there, you know, or at the very least, he'll never go back there twice. It's kind of the promise he made. He already kind of went back there, obviously, for Ciri when Sintra fell, well, before Sintra fell. But, yeah, he wants to investigate things. And Triss is like, oh, yeah, I know someone. And she teleports him with a portal. And he was like, oh, portals are no fun. I guess he's saying that because he just doesn't like using portals. And because like he did come out. It was almost like that Barry situation in the Arrowverse, where it's like anytime he'd speed like Diggle around, Diggle would just be like, and kind of almost want to throw up. Maybe it's kind of something of that nature, because he immediately ended up having to sit down. But lo and behold, who's the person he ends up, like Triss ends up recommending him to is, Istrid. It's like, right, he is the one that knows so much. But the complicated thing is, he's all about this Niflheim. I said Niflheim. Where am I pulling? I'm Greek mythology. Not Greek. Norse, yeah. I was about to say, like, where am I pulling Niflheim from? Right, I'm thinking for whatever reason, when instead of saying Nilfgaard, my mind immediately auto-completed to, like, Niflheim. I think I was thinking God of War. Regardless, but Nilfgaard and, you know, the elves, but they've also got, you know, a connection to the people coming after Ciri, so it's just, and also, they don't know it, but Istrid and Geralt are connected to the same woman. They have a complicated history of Yennefer, both of them. So, funny, once again, funny how the world works. Small world, in fact. How it all kind of draws all these people together. Once again, destiny's fickle and funny like that. But another key point that comes up this episode is that Vesemir goes and looks around the trail where Ciri was training and found blood. And I was like, what's that about? But he also found a plant. This very particular plant only grows in the presence of elder blood. But the elder blood was like wiped out generations ago. But it's like, right, Ciri has it. So it's like, because we're still unsure what her power is. Because at first Geralt was like, right, she doesn't show the typical signs of chaos. Like she has some foresight, like ability, like a seer. Plus now we know about this. Because it was never really, because Triss did say, like, yeah, she might potentially has a power similar to her mom's, but maybe an evolved version of it. Because we only saw Pavetta, like, use that power, like, during that event, so we don't know if it ever grew, or is it just because, like, maybe it gets stronger with every generation it gets passed on to. So Pavetta's power was what it was, but because, you know, Ciri's the next generation, it's even more powerful. I don't know if that's the indication with that. But Vesemir now is kind of happy about it because elder blood was supposedly an important ingredient in the mutagen necessary to make the first, like, Witchers. And so, obviously, when Kaer Morhen was attacked years ago, obviously during the events in the movie, like, that was all lost. There was no ability to make Witchers, which I was bringing it up before, like, I was like, because that last episode or episode before last, I was like, oh, maybe, like, the reason why there's other Witchers is because Vesemir made him more. But I was like, right, I forgot that detail. there shouldn't be any more because they can't make any more. All the necessary means to make more Witchers is gone. But once now, because I brought it up, like, right, there was only 4 orphans at the end. Once again, that could be like some licensing, like it's just like, right, those are the only 4 he stumbled across at first. There were others, but those 4 were the only ones there at the time. Because we never really got to the ins and outs of how many kids were actually there. So I'm probably overthinking it. It's like, right, they showed you those 4 at the end, but there had to be others. Once again, I'm thinking too much about it and getting too caught up in the details. So I think I let that stray my mind too much. But Vesemir is thinking, like, right, we'll be able to save the Witchers yet. Because eventually the Witchers will die off, whether it's just jobs. Because yes, they age slowly, but they still age. So they will eventually probably get older and die naturally to some extent. I guess you can make the argument naturally, like by getting older, they'll eventually die during some job because they won't be as quick as they used to be, type of thing. But with this, Vesemir is like, we can make more Witchers, and that basically they don't have to go extinct. Plus, like, their mission of killing monsters is important. Like, the world, it's almost like a cosmic thing, I think, on some level of, like, which is interesting because, well, Deglin, his mentor, father figure, kind of went about things in a similar, not necessarily in a Witcher manner, but to keep the Witchers alive, essentially. He created monsters so that they could have continue a living, and now he wants to make it so that the Witchers in general, as a species, as their role in this world, can continue. He's planning on making more, which I'm not sure how Geralt would feel about, like, knowing like Vesemir would be trying to make more. Us being what we are is fine, but it's like, right, like, I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see how that plays out. Especially because it's like Ciri's blood's going to be necessary, and I'm sure Geralt's not going to be too happy about her being used like that. I don't think Triss is going to be too happy about that either, but once again, we'll have to wait and see how that all plays out, because this could potentially end up putting Geralt and Vesemir, as well as Geralt, against the rest of the other Witchers, because they might be like, no, we need to, like, strengthen our ranks, so that might put, like I said, Geralt at odds with the other Witchers. We'll see where everyone stands going forward into the next episode. I'm excited to see what happens next, all across the board. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.